Hello and welcome back to our Curse Plays Arma 3. We're going to move along in the campaign here. We have disarmed all of the mines we could find in the town. And, gone and seen all the memories. So we're going to go ahead and go into the next mission.
There's an old photograph here. Picture of Alexis and his brother Marcos.
The civilian killed at the church. The landmine, right?
Yeah. Although honestly, it was a small miracle he'd made it that far.
This is one of the hardest missions.
Tell me more about Marcos.
Poor guy. He always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd made it through the airstrike, but only to get caught up in the assault that followed right after.
There were still guerrillas in the town, even after the strike.
Mm-hmm. But Oreo Castro, it wasn't just a town. It had become a symbol of the resistance. It was important for both sides, and government forces were making their final push. Alexis had made it out, but his brother, like I say, Marcos was always shit out of luck. The guy had been waiting at his brother's place. Marcos had been wounded, caught in the leg by shrapnel.
I see. Do you think he went there to talk his brother into leaving, or to join the cause?
Nope. I was actually just trying to see if he had a first aid kit on him, but he did not.
Marcos was there to talk his brother down, I think. He was only interested in survival, and that meant getting the IDAP at the church.
He remained a non-combatant then?
Protected by the Geneva Conventions, Article 51. But you gotta remember, right after the strike, it was total chaos.
I can see he's paying attention to me. This is one of the hardest missions in the entire campaign. Simply because there aren't any first aid kits, and if you get too close to any of the combatants, they will shoot you. And they are constantly making their way towards you too. I'm doing this one in third person just so that there's something more interesting going on. See, he's tracking me, which might be an indication that I'm too close to him. The organ for this mission is... It's a rendition of, the track is called This Is War, but this is like an organ rendition of it, and it's really good. I think because this episode's going to be so short, I think I'm gonna combine, like, you know, the walk around episode with this one too. So there's IDAP.
An hour or two later, the government sent a truck to our camp. The soldiers searched the civilians for hidden weapons.
But they didn't find any.
No, and we'd already checked. It's vital our camps are weapon-free spaces, safe havens.
And Marcus, he must have made it through then.
Yeah, just about. We talked a few times after. I don't know, he seemed different.
I can imagine why. And what did he do after?
Hard to tell, but like I said, he kept looking for his brother.
Of course. And Marcus, his body, is still there in the churchyard?
Yeah. To think he survived all that just to return to the same spot less than a year later.
So in that mission, if you pick up a weapon to try and fight, everybody turns hostile to you. There's no first aid kits, so you can't heal.
You said that Alexis had been a recruit in the Altis armed forces.
Yeah, that's right.
So his decision to leave the army, to join the guerrillas, do you know how that came about?
It's funny, I asked Marcos the same thing once. He just looked at me and shrugged. Later on, I heard their father had been killed in the Civil War, but I don't know. Whatever his reasons, Marcos seemed to have made peace with the fact he wouldn't change his brother's mind.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm actually in Alexis' place. He lived just above his workshop.
What's it like now?
Not great. The guerrillas really did a number on it. I don't think you'd ever guess this was once someone's home.
Yeah. For him to return to a place that he had thought was safe, like, years later. Okay, sorry about that. I was interrupted. But to return, like, years later to a place that had been safe, only to... Yeah, that's bad luck.
You know, I keep on hearing about the guerrillas, the problems they posed, but it's not quite clear. Are they a sizable force?
Nobody knows. And to be honest, I don't think they do either. It's uneven, inconsistent across the country. I mean, they got cells operating across Altis, Stratis too, but in terms of actual numbers, it's hard to say.
I don't think the Resistance would even know either what their numbers were, because they could essentially, you know, there's no contract that really binds you to that work, so if you've had enough, you just go home and never, you know, basically never pick up the weapon again. Especially because they had to work in cells, so, you know, most cells only had one person that, you know, had contacts with any other cells, and you start getting into, like, the web of compartmentalization.
Remember the government's drive on renewables?
Oh, I suppose so, yes. Wind and solar power, wasn't it?
Anything that qualified for an EU grant, really. Anyway, during the offensive, the siege of the town, the army pulled the plug.
They cut the power.
Yeah, wrecked some brand new turbines.
Really? And now? Are they repaired?
Yeah, almost. We're still off the grid. Kinda slows things down.
That's another thing too, how war tends to affect infrastructure. Because for a lot of it, like you know, things like power, that sort of thing, power communications. Like, I know in the way that the U.S. Wages war, that the first thing we're going to hit is we're going to take down power, we're going to take down communications. It is going to drastically limit the enemy command's ability to talk to each other and to direct their soldiers and defenses. Ah, there's the next one. And that wreaks havoc on, you know, the civilian population too, because industry relies on that power. Civilians rely on it for communications. But then things like airports, train yards, train tracks, all that stuff becomes targets because those things can be used for strategic purposes to move troops, refuel vehicles, that sort of things. Like, the whole infrastructure basically becomes a target to weaken the opposition before you move in, especially when you are mounting air power. That's one of the major things that when the Russians invaded Ukraine, that they just didn't seem to get. They weren't able to, you know, knock out the Ukrainian infrastructure. They weren't able to completely suppress enemy air defenses so that they can catch the Ukrainian Air Force on the ground. It's like every nation has been watching the way the United States has waged war since Vietnam. So, in my opinion, for a nation like Russia to completely fuck it up when we wrote the playbook and made it completely available to anyone on the face of the earth, that just speaks to the corruption and incompetence of their armed forces.
Our guys here, they didn't get much rest. Always on the go, 24/7.
Sounds like quite a logistics operation.
Sure, but it was about medical aid, too. Our doctor, he bore the brunt of it.
How so?
Our ambulance. Only a handful of IDAP camps had one. Poor guy had to cover a lot of ground.
Run back up the hill. Oh, I hate that it makes me walk, like, up, you know, base inclines like this. Okay. This thing I'm looking for, not right there. Is it outside? Oh, it's probably on the second floor. Yep.
Folks here, they'd seen some pretty bad stuff during the Civil War. People lost loved ones. It was like a black cloud hanging over everyone. Being in this place back then, you just knew things weren't going to end well.
Next building up the hill.
Do you know Mark Cole, Kate?
Our foreign correspondent, yes, of course.
I met him out here just before the ceasefire failed.
That sounds about right. Mark's been toing and froing since the coup back in 26.
I believe we met him at the end of the original campaign and in the aftermath of the canon ending.
The local priest here, Father Georgiopoulos, he was moving to an Orthodox mission in the Pacific, one of the Horizon Islands.
Did he ever make it?
Yeah, eventually. Tough guy, though. Decided to stay till all the fighting had ended. Said it was his place. Disaster, though, seemed to follow him everywhere.
The tsunami.
Right. Last I heard, he's been helping out with relief efforts.
Yep, and as we saw what was going on there in the Apex campaign. Man, that guy did not have good luck. Zoom out a little bit. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Because my eyes tend to miss things. Alright. Looks like we're going to have to make our way towards the church for the next mission.
Nana's been busy. Even managed to clear out a few mines.
Alright. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. This is Arcturus.